Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to At Home with Waldorf. This is my monthly free webinar here at Waldorf-Inspired Learning, and I want to welcome you to this month's topic, which is Waldorf homeschooling with multiple ages. So my name's Jean, and I'm the founder of Waldorf-Inspired Learning. Where my mission is to help mamas just like you find joy and connection in their homeschooling by infusing the lessons with the lively arts and nature. So I'm so glad you're here today to join me in this exploration of homeschooling multiple ages. So yes, it's the month of March. Today is March 1st. Hard to believe. And here in northeastern Ohio, it's been really warm, quite interesting. And let me just, we are supposed to get snow tomorrow, but we have crocuses coming up. So it just lets me know that spring is going to come again. Spring is on the way, which is very exciting to me. So welcome, and the first thing I would love to know is those of you who are here, could you let me know that you can see and hear me by typing into the chat box? You'll find the chat box below this video on the screen on the watch page, and it would be super helpful just to give me a little tech check so that I can know that I'm being seen and heard. That would be really great. And then what I want to let you know is, oh, good, that, I get a ton of questions from homeschooling parents. I've been homeschooling for over 20 years, and now I mentor other homeschoolers, and I get all kinds of questions via my blog, via email, and then from clients I work with one-on-one. Questions like what grade should my child be in, or which resources should I use for a particular block, or how can I start a mom's group, of like-minded mothers. But I want you to know that the question I get more than anything else is, how do I do this Waldorf method when I have children of different ages in different grades? So that's why I wanted to bring this topic to you this month and share different ideas that I've had over the years, and also give you some encouragement, some of which comes from Rudolf Steiner himself. So he did create this method for the classroom because that's what he was asked to do. And I'll talk a little bit about that during the presentation. But he also said a lot of things that can apply specifically to homeschooling. So I really want you to take heart in some of the things that he has said, and I will share those as we go along today. So before we actually get started with the presentation, hello, Ashley and Susan and Beza and Lisa. I'm so glad everybody can see and hear me. And Catherine, hi Catherine. So every month I delve into a topic of interest here at Home with Waldorf. This happens the first Tuesday of every month, and I delve deeply into one particular piece of Waldorf wisdom. And I also do a giveaway every month. So this month, it's a package. There are two giveaways this time. And the first is, you'll get an ebook of this, but this is my Building Community ebook or guidebook about creating playgroups or celebrating festivals or participating in co-ops as a homeschooling family. And it has a lot of ideas for multiple ages. In addition, I'm giving away a 30-minute mentor session with me because really and truly, trying to figure out how to work with multiple ages is unique to every single family. And the truth is, it's unique from year to year as well, because our children grow and change as they get older. So it's important to realize that. And I also wanted to have as part of the giveaway a mentor session so that you can begin to think about your own particular situation. So those are the two pieces of the giveaway. And the way you enter the giveaway, which will happen later on in the webinar, is by putting your name and where you're from into the chat box. So if you would introduce yourself in the chat box, that would be great, and put in your name and where you're from, and then you'll be entered to win the giveaway. Aside from the one person who's going to win the Building Community Guidebook and a 30-minute mentor session with me, everyone who is here will have an opportunity for a discount on a mentor session of your own with me. So I'll give you information on that toward the end. So just to start us off, I want to mention, and a lot of you I know have been here before, but I want to mention that there's a rhythm to this webinar, and we start with this intro and meet and greet in the very beginning, and you all can see what other people are posting in the chat box, which is kind of a fun thing. So we do this intro and meet and greet at the beginning here. And then I will delve into the topic of the day. So as I said, that is Waldorf Homeschooling with Multiple Ages. And I have a lot to share about that. And then I'll help you by weaving in, just offering a few verses and songs that you might use in your homeschool. We'll have a time for Q&A with me. So as we go along, you might want to have a paper and pen ready so that you could jot down questions that you have, and you're welcome to ask your questions as we go. However, I will say that it's just easier. It's more likely that your question is going to be seen, because the chat box moves kind of quickly. So it's more likely that your question will be seen if you save those for the Q&A part. Okay, so, and then I'll give you a few updates about what's going on at Waldorf-Inspired Learning, and then we have the giveaway. And I always like to end with a quote of the month by Rudolf Steiner, which is kind of fun. All right, so I just want you to know that you are in the right place if you're a homeschooler and you have children of more than one grade level. Even if you don't, you can get a lot of tips here. If you want to start a play group or participate in a co-op, that's cool too. But this webinar is intended to give you confidence in your planning and in carrying out your lessons when you have children in all these different stages of development. So we're going to begin and dig in. Hi, Elizabeth. Everybody, it's so much fun to see everybody who's here. Sabrina, hello, hello. And I said hi to Susan. Amanda, hi. Jennifer, Lisa, Amy, hi, everybody. It's really fun to see you all here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this month's topic, homeschooling with multiple ages, Waldorf homeschooling with multiple ages. And in order to do that, I'm going to share my screen with you. So here we go, and I'll be back for the Q&A. You'll see me again at that point. All right. Problematic though. Let's see. Okay, can you tell me, I'm on the wrong, if you can see my slides? Somebody tell me that, because yes, okay, here. There we go. Share. All right, now I'm hoping everybody can see the slides. So if you could just give me a yes or a thumbs up or something in the chat box, that would be great. And I can go ahead and get started. Nope. So I switched it. Yes. Okay, good. I switched it. Very good. Okay, we're good now. All right, so welcome to the March at Home with Waldorf. And as I said, we're talking about homeschooling with multiple ages today. And I'm so glad you're here with me. I've been really looking forward to presenting this topic to you. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jean Miller, and I'm the founder of Waldorf-Inspired Learning. I have been, my mentor, Barbara Dewey of Waldorf Without Walls, has really been an important figure in my life, and she actually was my children's first Waldorf teacher. She came to Cleveland once a week when my boys were in the early grades, and you can see my boys here. She traveled to Cleveland and taught a small group, a Waldorf-inspired group, just once a week for homeschooled kids. So that was something I set up and arranged, and then I learned so much from Barbara, and then I became that person and started offering a mixed age Waldorf group to various people in my community as my daughter became grade school age. So here are my three kids. You can tell that this is an older picture. They are now 26, 24, and almost 17. But I wanted to share this picture today because it shows those years when I was homeschooling multiple ages. So I had two boys in the grades, and my daughter was in, I'm not sure if she was in kindergarten or first grade at this point, because I did have three at one point, but very briefly, three different grades, because then my oldest one chose to go to the public high school, and the other two have homeschooled all the way through. So here they are, my three kids, in this really adorable photograph. Okay, so today's topic, as I said, is of Waldorf wisdom is homeschooling, Waldorf homeschooling with multiple ages. So I'm hoping that we can really delve into this topic in a way that's super helpful to all of you, and I look forward also to hearing your questions on this topic. So here we go. I want you to think, when thinking about Waldorf homeschooling with multiple ages, I find that the best way to think about this is to think of your homeschool as a one-room schoolhouse. When I think of a one-room schoolhouse, my fondest memory really of a one-room schoolhouse is reading the Laura and Mary books, the Little House on the Prairie books, and Laura and Mary going off to school. There was plenty of time still for doing work and chores around the house, but they would go to school for their lessons. And I have come up with, I've just listed here, 4 different ways that you can think about doing your lessons as a homeschool family. And I'm sure there are more than this, but I just wanted to give you a framework to wrap your mind around this in a way that you can, this just plants the seed. We're going to go into some detail with these in a little bit, but right now this helps you have an idea of the kinds of things we're going to be talking about. So the first is to stagger your main lessons, and that simply means what you might expect, where you do the 2nd grade main lesson with that particular child, and when you're finished with that lesson, then you do the 4th grade main lesson with the next child. This, I find, it works, can work, particularly if you just have 2 main lessons that you're working on at a time, but more than that can be pretty darn exhausting. I often say to people, I don't have more than 2 main lessons in me a day. It's totally up to you how you want to do this, of course, but this is just something that I wanted to share. So if you aren't able to get a main lesson in for every grade school or grade age child, I would then suggest trying one of these other approaches. So another thing that you can try is to combine main lesson blocks. And I'm going to share with you some ways of doing that during this webinar. You can also overlap main lesson blocks where you do part of the lesson together, perhaps the story or even an artistic activity, but then the main writing in the main lesson books might be different. And then a final approach would be to alternate days for main lesson blocks. And by that, I mean, you could do, there's this concept of a 2-day rhythm. So you really need 2 days, and it works best to have 2 days in a row for any particular child and any particular main lesson that you're working on. But you could do, Monday and Tuesday with the 2nd grader and Wednesday and Thursday with the 4th grader, if we're going to use that same example. So that would be alternating days. Okay, I'm going to come back to those specific ideas in a little bit, as I said. So first I wanted to share this idea that I absolutely love, which is that Waldorf homeschooling is the best of the best. So there's an author you might be familiar with whose name is Alan Whitehead. He has written the Spiritual Syllabus series of Waldorf curriculum. These are these small books. He's from, I believe, Australia, and he has a series of small books for different main lesson blocks throughout the grades. I have not found his curriculum books to be particularly well suited to me in particular. Everybody has their own preferences, but I will say that his book that's entitled A Steiner Homeschool, ? Has been really inspiring for me. And in this book, he says that Waldorf homeschooling is the best of the best. And a few of his points are that Waldorf education in general is created to develop a really deep sense of community. And the lessons are infused with the lively arts and nature, which makes the learning more memorable. If you've joined me before, I talk a lot about that. Because that was one of Steiner's main points. He created this method full of the arts because he felt like the lecture and note-taking system that was prevalent in Europe at the time was not particularly helpful. So he wanted to enliven the learning with the arts and nature, and he did that by infusing those things into the lessons, and then that he believed, and I think has proven, that makes the learning more memorable. Oh good, the slides are better now. Yeah, that can happen from time to time, and if you do have any issues, sometimes it helps to refresh your screen. Hit the little refresh button at the top. Yeah, okay. So his other point, Alan Whitehead's other point, is that homeschooling fosters independence. And Steiner wrote about wanting to develop an independence. One of his lines is education toward freedom, that the Waldorf approach is an education toward freedom. And by this, he means freedom of the individual, but also the individual being then connected to a community and to society. So given all of that, Waldorf homeschooling really is the best of the best. And I wanted to start with this because I think it is so, so important for us to know that what we are doing is important work, and it is not less than what happens in a Waldorf classroom. It is different from what happens in a Waldorf classroom, but I think we should be done with thinking about ourselves as a stepchild or as less than what happens in a Waldorf classroom, because it's simply not true. I think that we can look at Waldorf homeschooling actually as the best of the best, and I really believe that. I believe that because I've seen what it does for my own kids and for the lots of other children that I have taught. Okay, so here's what I want you to remember. I want you to remember that the goal is community. The goal is connection. And this is a really important point. Rudolf Steiner felt like the very premise of his whole approach was the interconnectedness of human beings. And so even in a family, our goal is to create community. So I want you to think, and you've probably thought of your family this way before, but I just really want to encourage you to think of your family as the community that we're talking about, or think of your family as the classroom if you have that comparison to a Waldorf classroom going on. Just be sure, like I said, though, don't think of yourself as second class or less than what's happening in a Waldorf classroom. So our family is the community, and the community building within our families can take different forms, and it does, from family to family. Rudolf Steiner started a school because he was asked to do that by Emil Molt. He was asked to start a school for the children of the factory workers at the Waldorf cigarette factory. If he'd been asked to give his thoughts on a homeschool setting, it could have been very different, and it's too bad that we can't ask him now what he would think. But he did have some experience with homeschooling. He himself was schooled at home up until a certain age, which I believe was maybe around age 10, but I don't have that fact in front of me, so don't quote me on that. He also, before he developed this method, he had worked as a teenager, as a tutor, teenager in his early 20s. He was the tutor of a boy who was believed to be uneducable. He had encephaly, or swelling of the brain, and so Steiner worked with him one-on-one for a number of years. And this boy went on to go to both university and to medical school, which is really an amazing thing and very interesting in terms of thinking about the Waldorf approach, because this is where Rudolf Steiner developed his concept that we do not want to overtax our children's brains. Therefore, we should keep the lessons short, and we should make sure that there's plenty of activity throughout the day. Not only artistic activity during the lessons, but time to just explore, free play, whatever you want to call it, unschooling, whatever you want to call it. Rudolf Steiner believed that there should be time for that. He actually said about the first school that they had to make compromises from the very beginning because the authorities required the children to be at school all day long. He wanted the children there just for the mornings, and he made this statement that, okay, well, I guess now, after they had talked about some of the lessons, the morning lessons, he said, okay, I guess now we have to figure out what to do with the children the rest of the day, because they have to stay here, because the authorities require them to stay here. And he said, well, I think, it would just be best to let them play in the garden. That was his initial response. But then, of course, they couldn't do that because they had to be approved by the authorities. So compromises from the beginning for the classroom setting. Just want you to know that. I also want to encourage you to remember that Waldorf education is a healing education. He created this to heal the ills of society after World War I. Europe and Germany in particular were falling apart economically and in so many other ways, and he felt like the social interactions were in need of healing. And I would propose that 100 years later, we are in a similar situation. So here we go. We continue the work of Rudolf Steiner. And I also truly believe that we've each been called to do this work. So no matter how challenging it can be some days, I think it's important for each of us as the homeschooling parent and teacher to believe in this, believe in ourselves, that we have the capacity within us to rise to the occasion, and believe that this is what our children need. And yes, Elizabeth is saying that what we do is way better than school because it's customized to our children. And that's something I'm going to bring up again later. So important, so important. And thanks for typing that in the chat box, Elizabeth. Steiner also was known to say over and over again that our job as teachers is to create a curriculum for those children who are before us. Therefore, you can't really create a standardized curriculum. That was his opinion, which is why it's been so hard over the years to buy a Waldorf curriculum, because truthfully, he wanted us to create it ourselves. That was his intention. The very first teachers, he gave them lectures for 2 weeks, and then he said, okay, it's time to open the doors to a brand new school, and off they went. So in the spirit of that, I think we can lighten up, but also deepen our conviction for the work we do. It is important work, and even though it can seem confusing and crazy some days, it's possible. It is possible for you to do this Waldorf homeschooling. So the last thing I want to say here about the community is that as homeschoolers, we have the freedom, like I said, to determine what forms that takes. So whether we want to work just with our own family and children, that's one possibility, or in playgroups, or bring some of these main lesson blocks to a co-op that we might belong to, or share homeschooling with another family. There are lots of forms this can take. Okay, so I just want to say again, you can do this, and that it's different for each and every one of us. And like I said, it changes from year to year, which often parenting can seem like just when I'm used to this new stage of development, like I'm finally getting a handle on it, oh, it changes again. But that's the nature of the situation of just being a parent. And then to add homeschooling on top of that, it's definitely an individualistic approach that's required. So I'm going to give some examples today, but I also want you to know that think about those very first teachers who only learned about Waldorf education for 2 weeks, and then they were off in the classroom, and only one of them, there were 12 teachers in the beginning. This is a subject I love, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about, but I blog about these lectures at this on my website, Waldorf-Inspired Learning. There's a section of it called the Steiner Cafe, where my friend Allison and I blog about the lectures to the very first teachers. So there were 12 teachers. Only one of them had ever been a teacher before. Steiner selected them that way on purpose because he wanted them to have a fresh perspective. He gave them lectures for 2 weeks and then said, okay, time to open the doors now, and off they went. So I think that it's heartening to know that even if we don't know a whole lot about Waldorf education, we can still dive in. We can still try, and he also encouraged them to work through trial and error. So he would give them suggestions and say, this is developmentally where they are. This is the type of subject I think you should bring to this age child. Now go and see what those children in that particular class need and figure it out. So in your situation, you might be a family of 3 children, ages 6, 9, and 11. You might just have 2 children, maybe 8 and 12. You might have 5 children, ranging in age from 2 to 17. There are all kinds of constellations that might exist. And so the question becomes, how do you create a plan for your family? And I'm gonna give you some ideas for that today. So this is the first place that I want to start. This is from a blog post I did from one of Steiner's lectures, and I found this lecture so intriguing, and I should know which lecture it was, and I don't, but I will, I always at the end on the watch page, I'll put some links below the video after this is over. So I'll put a link specifically to this post, but also let you know which lecture it is. Those lectures to the first teachers are collected in 3 books. The Foundation of Human Experience, Practical Advice to Teachers, and Discussions with Teachers. And this is from one of the lectures in that first 2-week training for the very first teachers. And in it, Rudolf Steiner said, really, instead of looking at a grade by grade curriculum, let's look at the developmental stages. So these are the 3 stages of development within the Waldorf curriculum for the grades. I'm going to show you an image in just a minute, and something you might have seen often before, where Steiner talks about children ages 0 to 7, and then 7 to 14, and then 14 to 21, or to adulthood. And we will break this down a little bit more, but this in particular is a list of just that middle section of the grades. So here's a list that he created. It's a pretty simple list, actually. And the list is broken up into children up to the 9th year. So this could be from age 6 or 7 to 9. Children up to the 12th year, or between ages 9 and 12, and then children between age 12 and 15. So, and then this is just the brief list of what he says. So children up to the age of 9, music and painting, this is what we want to bring to them. Music and painting and drawing, writing, which arises out of drawing, reading, which arises out of writing, foreign languages, and arithmetic. Then in the next group, developmentally, from ages 9 to 12, grammar, natural history of the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, foreign languages again, physics, and geography. And then over the age of about 12 or 13, it depends on the child, but when they're ready for more abstract thinking, grammar, minerals, physics and chemistry, and foreign languages again. So we'll look again at this chart. I made a chart of this list in a little different format that we'll look again in just a minute. So you can find posts from the Steiner Cafe at my website, waldorfinspiredlearning.com/the Steiner Cafe. Another post, if you haven't seen it, that I think you would be interested in is the geography lesson post that Allison and I did recently. And in this, Steiner actually says that the example he gives in this lesson about teaching geography, he says, is something that you could apply to all subjects. So it's kind of an example lesson. And in addition, Allison, my partner at the Steiner Cafe, wrote, we kind of wrote together, but it was her brainchild, a sample geography lesson for multiple ages. So if you're interested in seeing a sample lesson, you can go to this post, geography lessons. Okay. And thank you, Ashley, for posting the link there in the chat box. All right, so here is what I was talking about. This is the general overview. You've seen me talk about this before if you've been here at with us for At Home with Waldorf, but this is the general thinking, feeling, willing chart, okay? And Steiner says we want to bring about thinking, feeling, and willing. We want to knit these together. So in the early ages, from age 0 to 7, or birth to 7, children learn through or the main approach is through rhythm, and they learn through play and imitation. In the grades years, which is what we're going to talk about a little more specifically here, for ages 7 to 14, we want to teach through the arts, and children learn through feeling and the arts. And then, of course, age 14, 13, 14, 15, like I said, it can vary. These are the thinking years where children learn through thinking and new ideas and through their intellect. So that is something you might be familiar with already, because those are that's the broad spectrum of the years that our children are with us. Now, what I wanted to do, now let me just say, let me go back to the slide for a second. What I've done is take the middle section of the feeling section, which is from ages 7 through 14, or really beyond 14 too, and broken that down even further. Actually, it's from 7 to the end of high school. So it's the second 2 sections. So here is how it goes. There are the early grades, and this list is the same list that was in, let me just go back to here. So this list, what I did, this list from the 3 stages, this is a list that Rudolf Steiner stated in his lectures to the first teachers. I took that list and I put it into this chart because I wanted you to see that there are definite and fairly logical overlaps. So foreign language for all ages, early, middle, and later grades. I would say music for all ages. He didn't actually list it because it draws children of age 7, between the ages of 7 and 9 in very readily. And painting and drawing in those younger grades. So to me, I like to think about this as grades 1 through 3, grades 4 through 6, and then grades 7 and 8, basically, or 7, 8, and 9 could be the later grades. So just back to the early grades, then there's reading, writing, and arithmetic. So those are the simple subjects to be covered in the early grades. Now, one wonderful thing about looking at it this way is that, so clearly this comes from Steiner's own list. So clearly he was not attached to this concept of a grade-by-grade curriculum exclusively, but that's our perception of it because we've only seen this method applied in a classroom. But if we want to reinterpret this method for homeschoolers, I think it's really important for us to go in from this angle because, you know, all of us do the comparison thing, right? Probably every single one of us on this call today have felt less than or felt like we're not doing as much as the classroom does. We'll never be able to do as much as the classroom does. What's wrong with us? Our children aren't getting the best education they can. I'm only second rate, but I'm going to give it a try. You know, so to come from that position, it's not really a position of strength, is it? But I think to come to it from this position, looking at Steiner's own list of the early grades, the middle grades, and the later grades, it's so simple. So even if we use his main lesson blocks, the curriculum's main lesson blocks as our starting point, this, I think, is important to keep in front of our eyeballs at all times because this is so simple. It is possible for any parent on the planet to cover these subjects in these grades in a super simple way. It's totally doable. So don't let yourself be, what's the word? Intimidated by what classroom teachers do. They aren't doing what's perfect either. I mean, I talk to Waldorf classroom teachers fairly frequently. One good friend of mine says they have issues all the time about One of the current issues in the movement is we've overdone it on main lesson books because children now are becoming competitive with their main lesson books. And it isn't really about the content for some children. It's about outdoing other children in their classroom. Okay, that's not what we want. That wasn't the original intention. So just know that, yes, Waldorf homeschooling is different than Waldorf in a classroom. However, it's not second rate. And these are the subjects that we can cover. So I just want to encourage you, and you can come back to this slide anytime you want, because the recording of this will be up on my website. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but I just want to point out that you can see the overlaps. Like if you were doing if you were doing with the early grades with a child between the ages of 7 and 9, you could be doing a writing block while you're doing grammar with the other two grades. You could be doing nature stories in the younger grades while you were doing the animal or plant kingdom and minerals. I'm just reading across and finding commonalities. And you know, there's physics in both. There's geography is a fabulous mixed age block to do. And foreign languages, you can see, grammar. So there's so many overlaps. So I just want you to really keep that in mind. Okay, so let's get into planning and how you might actually do this in a really practical way. So the first thing is, I do recommend starting with the blocks or the story curriculum, because otherwise you're kind of reinventing the wheel and having to do a lot of work to get to where you want to be. So this is just sort of an experiment. Try to be lighthearted with this. I do have that image on the right is from a document that's on my website under free resources, and it lists the Waldorf block rotation for each grade. So it has the blocks that are generally done, most often done in grade 1, in grade 2, etc. So it gives you the grade by grade list of what the most common blocks are that are suggested for each grade. So my personal opinion, plan 2 main lesson blocks a day if you have a mixed age group. And that means that if you have more than 2 children in the grades, you need to combine, mix and match, as I said earlier, alternate days or something like that. You know, my statement that I made that I don't have more than 2 main lesson blocks in me a day, sometimes I only have 1. I can't sustain 2 main lesson blocks all year either. So I need to find some months where, and I tend to hang a main lesson block on a month because it's the simplest thing mentally to keep a handle on. So that means, like, in the month of September, I'm doing these 2 blocks. In the month of October, I'm doing this block or these 2 blocks. Maybe in the month of December, we're all just making gifts, right? And maybe we're reading stories about gifts, but we're not necessarily making a main lesson book. Another way to do it is that if you were doing, say, science, quote unquote, for across all the grades that you have, you could be doing, like I said, you could be doing some nature stories with the younger one, and maybe not even making a main lesson book. Maybe the main lesson book you're concentrating on is the farming block for your 3rd grader, and then your older child or children are doing the man and animal, or something in the upper grades. You could be doing physics at the same time, but you only have one of those children doing a main lesson book at any one time. That's just another possibility. But if you have 2 main lessons a day with 2 main lesson books going, then you've got to group your children if you have more than two kids in the grades. The other piece I want to just remind you of is that I think it's best to keep, if you're going to do multiple main lesson blocks per day, to keep your main lessons to 1 to 1.5 hours. That's plenty. Remember that there's learning going on all the time. So the only the learning is not limited to the lesson time. Your children are getting much more in addition to the lesson time. So just keep that in mind. All right, so here's my easiest planning tip, and that is Post-it notes are your friend. So here's what I've done, and I have found this helps really enormously. This is a great way for planning. Take that document that I have on my website about the Waldorf block rotation for grades 1 through 8. Get a different set of Post-it notes, a different color Post-it note for each of your children. So say your first grader is green and your third grader is blue and your seventh grader is yellow. Write all the main lesson block possibilities for each of those grades color coded. So all the main lesson block titles, one per Post-it note on the green Post-its, et cetera, et cetera. So then you have a set of 3 different colored Post-it notes with lists of the blocks. And remember, just put 1 per Post-it note. And I like to spread these out on my dining room table. And then, or you can get a poster board, a big piece of paper, something like that. And then you want to begin looking for overlaps, like which 2 blocks, which green and blue block could you combine? Which blue and yellow block could you combine? What could you do that was sort of related to all 3, a block topic for all 3 grades? So the first thing is you're looking for overlaps. Now I want to get back to the concept that I stated at the beginning, which is to stagger your main lessons or combine main lessons, overlap main lesson blocks, or alternate days. So again, it can sound a little confusing because there are, it's like the permutations, right? There's so many possibilities here, and it totally depends on your situation. But what this will allow you to do is see what some of those possibilities are. And you could have so many aha moments doing this. You can begin to think, oh, I know what I'm going to do in, like right now it's March, right? So in the month of April, we're going to start a garden, and that covers the farming block for the 3rd grader. We're going to read stories about birds and earthworms. That's going to cover a nature block for the 1st grader. And the 7th grader at the same time is going to delve more deeply into stories about maybe biographies of stories of people who have helped work toward environmental awareness or make the world a safer place environmentally. And they could do a whole block on that, absolutely. And you can bring history into it too for that 7th grader. So lots of different ways to do this, and I hope this gives you at least the beginnings of a visual so that you can see all the possibilities here. Okay, so a few other things about lesson time with multiple ages. I do think it's great to start with warm-up time, and I had a question last month that I'm going to get into in a second about doing circle time with mixed ages. But only if you can pull that off. Movement, music, and verses are really fabulous, a really great rhythmic way for everyone to begin, but it doesn't always work. And then once you get into doing the lessons, I always suggest that you start, and this too is going to vary by family, but what I have seen work in my own family and in other families is to start the lesson time with your youngest child or children. So the youngest group, you're going to work with them first thing in the morning. The older ones can then work independently. Perhaps they're doing their math. Perhaps they're doing some writing from the day before, from the lesson the day before. Or you might need them to help with babies, toddlers, and kindergartners. So it depends, again, on your own family constellation. But then what you would do is switch, and the younger ones can finish up their drawing or whatever they're working on while you start with the olders, and then they get playtime while you work with the older children. So sometimes it's hard to establish that idea of that you don't want them interrupting you. Sometimes a school basket like of special toys that only comes out during this lesson time and gets put away at the end, sometimes that works well. Start slowly and build up their capacity for playing independently if you don't have that already. All right. So working independently in Waldorf homeschooling, you know, Waldorf classrooms are teacher directed throughout the grades, all the way up through 8th grade. And to me, that's a real downfall. In the homeschool setting, we get to gradually wean our children off their need for us, which is a hugely important skill for as they approach high school and for going away to college. So in that sense, Waldorf homeschooling is another blessing. So do begin to wean your children off their dependence on you. You can start around 6th grade. You could start in little steps even earlier if you need to or feel like they're ready to. Again, you need to look at the children before you and see what's best for them. So it does, like I have said a number of times, it really depends on your own family constellation. Now, this is from last month when we talked about movement, but here's just a simple structure for circle time. And I included this again this month because I wanted to talk about how this might be done with mixed ages. So you can start with a song or playing singing or playing something on recorder. You might recite a seasonal verse, another song, a beanbag game, some math exercises, a song, and then maybe the opening verse to your lesson. So that's a super simple structure for circle time. So how does this work when you have like a 2-year-old and a 12-year-old? I think that was the specific question. So to me, I see really 2 main possibilities. And one is you can have the older children do circle time for the younger ones. So you pick songs and verses that are appropriate for kindergartners and have the olders do the circle for the sake of the youngers. That's one way to keep them involved longer. Or you let them off the hook and you say that circle time is just for those who are in grades 3 or 4 and under. And because children really around the age of 9 or 10, they really do start to feel like they are done with circle time. So those are 2 ways to do it. And really either works. You can try one and see how it goes. You can switch it from one year to the next, whatever works for your family. So I just want to begin to wrap up by saying it's really important that you know your own strengths and limits. Sustainable homeschooling is really about us as much as it is about our children. And if you can take anything away from today's webinar, it would be that you're worth it. This is important work. Waldorf homeschooling is equally valuable to Waldorf in the classroom. So take care of yourself and know your limits, right? So if you don't have the energy to do 2 main lessons a day, then you're going to have to combine a lot more. You're going to have to alternate days. It does help to keep outside responsibilities to a minimum, but just begin to really pay attention to your own needs as well as your children's needs. So I love this quote. Rudolf Steiner said that we need to be like plumbers in the dark. That's what teachers need to be, plumbers in the dark. And even the very first Waldorf teachers, as I've said, had to work like this. So you can do it. Trust yourself and teach the children before you. Create the curriculum that they need. All right, so I have a couple of songs and verses that I want to share, and then it will be time for Q&A and the giveaway. So this very first one can be sung around, and probably most of you know, but if you don't, children below about the age of 9 shouldn't be required to sing around because it's really hard for them to keep their own sense of self and hear something outside of themselves at the same time, but they could sing around with you. So if you have them right close by your side, they could be singing the part with you. This is one of my favorite songs. Early one morning, Out in my garden, songs of a bird. Early one morning, clearly I heard. Out in my garden, songs of a bird. And then here's a simple one that you can do for younger ones that has hand movements to it. And I'll have a link to a document with these verses in it below the video too that describes the hand movements. You could probably guess though. So it goes like this. A nest is a home for a robin. A hive is a home for a bee. A hole is a home for a rabbit. And a house is a home for me. Kind hearts are the garden, kind thoughts are the roots, kind words are the blossoms, kind deeds are the fruits. Haha, your one roll is clapping. That's so cute, Bonnie. Thank you. Okay, and then here's a poem called Little Seeds by Elise Holmlund-Minarik that goes like this. Little seeds we sow in spring, growing while the robins sing. Give us carrots, peas, and beans, tomatoes, pumpkins, squash, and greens. And we pick them one and all through the summer, through the fall. Winter comes and spring, and then little seeds we sow again. And then a closing verse that I love to do, and again, you can do movements, big body movements with this, is God's love flows through me. My heart is a shining star. My love goes out to all I know. So there are a few welcoming spring verses, and now it is time for Q&A. So I'm going to come back on, and if you have any questions, you could type them in the chat box. And I'm also going to, in just a few minutes, let you know the winner of the giveaway here. So let me unshare. Here we go. Stop sharing my screen. Okay, there we go. I'm back. Hi. All right, so if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box. And then in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to let you know who the giveaway winner is. My daughter is downstairs choosing the giveaway winner right now. So I did want to mention one other thing that I forgot to mention before I told you about rounds, which is about Steiner. I want you to remember that Steiner, think about Steiner as the tutor, and that he worked with this individual who many people thought was not teachable, and he found ways to make that work for that particular individual. And to me, that's really, it provides me with a certain determination, but in a happy sort of a way, that no matter who our children are, no matter how difficult they can be on some days, no matter how resistant they might be to lessons, no matter how behind they might seem to us, no matter how much we might think we haven't done enough, it is possible to find ways to bring them exactly what they need. And if you haven't found that yet, take heart, you will. And sometimes it requires less pushing on our part, right? More allowing for them. Okay, so I have a question here that says, I have two boys, kindergarten and 7th grade. I choose to do separate block lessons, but the kindergarten always wants to play with the 7th grader and keep up with him. How do I bring him back to kindergarten appropriate stories? He feels he should get equal media electronic time and all, and we're really struggling with this. That's really hard when they're that. My kids, my youngest is that much, there's a really big gap between my second and third child. And I would sometimes say to people, yeah, my daughter was raised by teenage boys. It's not always the best approach. But so first of all, just know this is your family. This is the family this child was born into. And it's not going to be the same as if you only had a kindergartner, right? Without an older child. It's just not. There's no way it can be the same. Okay. Take a deep breath. Secondly, it is possible, and it takes a lot of strength on our part, but to say to a kindergarten age child that when you are in 7th grade, you will get to do these things, you know, but not right now, and then say when the 7th grade child was your age, they didn't do these things, you know, so we each get to do different things as we grow older, and then try to point out some things to the kindergartner that they've now been able to do. You can now ride a bike. Remember, you couldn't ride a bike before. Or you now get to set the table for dinner, and you didn't get to do that when you were 3. So you want to bring those point out those milestones to the child. But I would say it is very hard. You know, again, we're a community, and it is very hard to say to a child, you don't want to say to a child, you can't join us, because we're trying to make it a group. We want everybody to feel good together. So the way to do it is to encourage the 7th grader to help you do some age-appropriate activities for the younger one, and do that first, and then to also be able to have encouraging, enriching playthings out for the kindergartner for when their attention span begins to lapse, so that they know that they can go play and that you can still see them and hear them and they're nearby, but they don't have to be part of the lesson. Okay, I hope that is helpful. All right, Faze is asking how much planning time should we need for each main lesson? That's a really good question. Just like a teacher in a classroom, it's going to take more time in the beginning when you aren't used to it. There are some resources out there that you can use. Donna Simmons has some unit studies that you can use for different grades. But I encourage people to start on the other way, instead of buying something, to start really simply. So I often say to people, if you are super overwhelmed and don't have any planning time at all, then just do, sorry, I'm checking the chat. Just do the story, you know, that's enough. I think for me, I would give myself an hour or so on a Sunday. I would always try to do it on the Thursday before. It hardly ever worked out that way. On a Sunday the week before, just to be able to plan the week. And then in the evenings, I would sometimes need to do a little bit more to get ready, or get up early and do a little bit more to get ready. But you know, spending a lot of time on planning is super exhausting for mom and not a really good approach. So if you begin to get the structure down of story, artistic activity, work in a main lesson book, then you get to a point where you're spending even less time than that on planning the lessons. Okay, let's see, a couple more questions. I'm with family with everything from almost 5 up to 15. What suggestions do you have for starting this in the middle of the school year? I've never really been able to get our Waldorf up and running, and now the school year is almost over. What do you suggest in middle of the year, preschool, 3rd, 6th, and 9th grades? So I would say you have 2 possibilities, and maybe this will give you blocks for April and May. So one block, do geography. I think geography is an absolutely fantastic mixed age block. And I have lots of resources in my planning guide. Jess, I think you might have my planning guide. And the older ones in grades 6 and 9 can be making, even the 3rd grader if they want, can be making a main lesson book. And the younger ones don't necessarily need to. So maybe you have a trip planned in the summer and you're looking at that region of the United States, or maybe you have family in different parts of the world and you're looking at that. You know, usually the 9th grader would be studying more of world geography, and maybe the 3rd grader and the 6th grader would be doing US geography, but you can decide whatever you want it to be. And then I would say in the month of May, do gardening. You know, in 9th grade in a Waldorf school, they'd be doing gardening, and in 3rd grade there's a farming block, and the 6th grader can certainly be doing that too. And again, I like to not make main lesson books for every block, so I'd say don't even make a main lesson book for that one. Just get outside. If they want to be creating some sort of book about the activities, you could be taking photographs, or they could be drawing pictures of the different activities. And you could even start this in April if you're going to start a garden. But I'd say geography and farming or gardening would be your 2 best bets. And create a block. Just create a block. Create a mixed age block. Look at the geography lesson block on my website, just as an example, because you could use that for geography, but it would also be a good format for, you could create something for gardening from it. Okay, 1st and 5th in the fall, says Catherine. And oh, good. I'm so glad it's been helpful, everybody. Thank you, thank you. So I'm going to do the giveaway. Sorry it's taken me so long to get here, but I'm going to share my screen again and move to the giveaway. And the giveaway winner is, I'm so excited. Hang on. So I have, for the giveaway, on the left is the Building Community guidebook that I'm giving away, and then a 30-minute mentor session with me. And the winner is Ashley from the Philippines. Oh my goodness. Ashley from the Philippines, you are the winner of today's giveaway. I'm super excited. I hope, I don't know if you're still here, but if you are, please let me know in the chat box. And what I need from you is just an email address. Okay, so congratulations to Ashley. And I'm going to back up a second and just give you a little more information. I am giving 25% off on mentor sessions with me to all of you. So this is good through Sunday the 6th, and you'll need to email me because I'm in the middle of major technical changes on my website, and coupon codes aren't working. So just email me saying you are on the webinar, and what you'll do is purchase it at the $55 level, and then I'll refund the difference. But you can shoot me an email and say, so if you want an hour's mentor session with me, they're normally $55, and I can help you with your particular situation. So that's my big update. And next month is the topic is Waldorf curriculum, or what is curriculum? Hint, it's not just something you buy. So we're going to talk all about curriculum. And the last thing I wanted to share, oh good, Ashley, thank you. Super exciting. Okay, the last thing I want to share is that we have the dates for the 10th annual Taproot Teacher Training 2016. So every year in Ohio, in Northeastern Ohio, I host this, or I'm part of this teacher training with my mentor, Barbara Dewey, and other wonderful teachers. And the dates for this coming summer are August 11th through the 14th. And this takes place at the Cuyahoga Valley Environmental Education Center in Peninsula, Ohio. And I hope that you will consider joining us. We would love to have you this year. There's some people actually here in the webinar who've been before, so maybe you want to say something about it, but we'd love to have you. I'm super excited. We're beginning our planning now, and we're going to have even more offerings of handwork and painting, and we're doing the main lessons by 2 grade blocks. So we're going to do grades 1 and 2, grades 3 and 4, and grades 5 through 8. Okay, here's the Steiner quote of the month. The Steiner quote is, "All education is self-education." Yeah, Rudolf Steiner said this, and he really believed that we're each teaching ourselves. That's the thing. So think about your children, that they are really learning no matter how you approach it, and that your job is to facilitate their self-education. That's how I see it. So here's some ways to connect with me. On Pinterest, I'm Waldorf Inspired. On Facebook, I'm Waldorf Inspired Learning. And here's my email, jean@waldorfinspiredlearning.com. There's a question from Carla. Will you have this on your website? So I'm thinking maybe, Carla, your question is about the coupon code? No, I'm not. Tell me specifically, Carla, what your question is in reference to, because I won't have information about the discount on my website, because that's only offered to those of you who are on the webinar or who watch a replay by this is going to be good through the 6th of March. So if you're watching it in between the 1st and the 6th, you can take advantage of it. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And next time we will be gathering on Tuesday, April 5th at 4 o'clock again, Eastern Time. If you're signed up, which you are for today, you'll get the email next time. You only have to sign up once. And thank you so much for joining me. So I'll stick around for a couple minutes in the chat if you want to add anything or have any more questions. But I really appreciate you being here with me today, and have a good evening. And I'll see you next time. Bye.